Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ed Greer,
And I'm producer Bill.
and today we're going to discuss greatest duos in pop culture.
Oh, yeah. I mean, basically only behind greatest trios as far as something so important to the world of pop culture.
Greatest quads. That goes to the She-Hulk. Anyway,
Oh, hey, love it. Wordplay.
I really think that duos, just to start the conversation off, I think that duos are integral to comic books because often you need someone there to remark upon how fresh the hero is. I think I've recounted several times in my early screenplays. I would just have a character that was just like Jubei Kubagami times Indiana Jones times Godzilla, just run roughshod through the whole story, and no one was there to go, damn, that was really cool, character,
Mm,
or wow, you should try it this way, oh thanks old chum, whatever. There's just a dynamic of having your hero have someone to talk to when we're looking at things on the screen or on the comic book page, wherein a lot of times internal monologue is either downplayed or can't be part of it because it's a movie or something. Duos really help to elucidate the action, to give you the stakes, to give you how rough this would be if you didn't have a partner. You know, most
hmm
partner movies, if they were there by themselves, they'd get messed up. So it just graduates the whole thing when there's a duo.
I agree. I also think there's a distinction to be drawn between duo and sidekicks. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of what you're talking about in terms of having a sounding board, having a devil's advocate, whatever it might be, that's a role that can be filled by a sidekick. But I think what elevates the concept of a duo is now when you truly have a dual protagonist, you have two forces that the audience could ostensibly be rooting for who might find themselves against each other or at loggerheads. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that creates a whole wrinkle in the story that your traditional hero with a thousand faces type story just doesn't have. That idea
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, there are two people with equal importance who might equally be right and equally true to their own wants, needs, desires. And yet, that one or both of them are going to have to put that aside in order to get whatever the bigger issue is fixed. And I like that a lot as a story element.
So I think what I'm talking about is Batman and Robin, and what you're talking about is Tango and Cash.
Although famously, Tango and Cash have very little to distinguish between the two of them. Perhaps, perhaps more of a Riggs and Murtaugh is what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, definitely by like the second movie, Murtaugh's the freaking sidekick, though. But yes, that
Mhm,
is an interesting creep that happens with duos. You know,
mhm.
so okay, let's talk about them. They are an OG duo, and that is Riggs and Murtaugh. I personally love the first movie more than all the rest of them for obvious reasons. But I think the main obvious thing is Riggs is a human being with a set of skills and a lot of mental problems. And Danny Glover is a human being that's just trying to play out the string, not trying to do too much risky stuff. And then he's got this guy who, I mean, he's black and he's approaching retirement, and his white partner is the guy who's gonna live even though he wants to die. It sparked an idea. I kicked it to this guy. Was like, I'm gonna write a movie about a guy who realizes he's the black guy that has to die, or he's a supporting character that has to die, to so he's trying to go through the adventure as safe as possible and messing everything up. I mean, the OG would be this thing, and it would be really easy for them to have written the story to where Murtaugh is just some bum and he doesn't have all this agency. But the first one really is, I don't know, it's a lot Murtaugh's story
Oh, very
about,
much so.
so I just think the first Lethal Weapon really shows you the idea of crazy person and family man and how they have a unique alchemy to do adventures. Whereas the next ones are Murtaugh going, God damn, Riggs, that was great. God
Right.
damn, Riggs, that was great. It's not so much a partnership for the rest of the movies.
Agree with that completely. And yeah, when I think about it, I do think about the first one where they each kind of have their own weighty storyline. Murtaugh with his family and Riggs with his suicidality. And the way that that sort of ties together in that movie is that ultimately Riggs is trying to get over the death of his wife, and it's Murtaugh that sort of provides him with a surrogate family and a place to belong that the death of his wife left him without. And so it's sort of that whole idea of reconciling grief, reconciling coming to the end of something, in the case of Murtaugh, his career, with, what you can get from other people. And so Murtaugh stays on the force, Riggs finds a new family, and in that synthesis, the story finds its conclusion.
Yes, and that's why they're on this list. Also, I gotta say, maybe it's just Oreo cookie thoughts, but detectives Mills and Somerset, or rather Somerset and Mills, because Morgan Freeman is Somerset. From Seven, that's a great duo. I think it does what Lethal Weapon does, but with like, it's like what if Lethal Weapon took a limitless pill or something.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, I also want to quibble a little bit with the characterization of Riggs and Murtaugh as being the first of that sort of duo, because honestly, like, the only thing Lethal Weapon did was it kind of took seriously the thing that was played for laughs in like Starsky and Hutch. And then even
Mm,
Starsky and Hutch was essentially just saying, what if we took the odd couple and stuck them in a police procedural?
mm-hmm,
So it almost, like, the whole thing almost goes back to Walter Matthau and John Lennon, or John Lemon, in The Odd Couple. And then even that goes further back into freaking vaudeville acts like Laurel and Hardy. So
mm-hmm,
it's just funny how, like, this entire concept of the duo, or the deuteragonists in fiction, right, goes all the way back to, traveling vaudeville shows. Um,
mm-hmm.
not to discount from your point at all, but yes, I think when you do trace that lineage, you end up with something like Mills and Somerset in Seven.
Well, yeah, and I think the thing that it's whenever something is reintroduced as a new thing, there's always some wrinkle on it, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
could say like, "Oh, Taylor Swift isn't interesting," which you could certainly say, but you could say that her career isn't unprecedented because of fucking Doris Day or whoever the hell. But the spin that she put on it, like talking to basically women NPC youth with this collection of cliches of like you doubt me but I'm better than you something that whole just section of just drag and drop responses and emotionality. She like took control of our generations, that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Murtaugh and Riggs kind of come from a place where, I mean, imagine how they would be in Serpico,
Mm.
imagine how they would be in the 60s, and imagine how they'd be in the 50s. So it's like in the 80s there was finally this ability for the black dude to be an authority figure and an older like wise guy, but then still have this loose cannon dude that they could see each other as equals and shit. I'm thinking about like how I really wish we could have seen a real true modern Tonto and Lone Ranger,
Mm.
because they weren't equals. Tonto was definitely a sidekick. He was basically a super horse as far as how the narrative treated him.
Brutal, but yes.
It's brutal, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think what different world could we have of these kind of partners linking up if we had a kind of grokked earlier that men have been able to be friends across racial and social and class lines for a long fucking time, and it just never really gets depicted, and like in the 80s comes around and it's finally okay to have them be in that level of partnership where one isn't subservient to the other and stuff. So I think it's that's why it's kind of struck me as this sort of a bellwether of our changing idea of what a buddy cop thing could be. But yes, you're right. It's an evolution of the form, not an originator. So in that respect, Somerset and Mills, I got to say, the intellectuality of the older cop. A lot of times, the older cop is more experienced, but they don't normally portray him as actually a genius or smarter than the young cop. Usually, he's sort of a not necessarily a coward, but certainly more cautious, and maybe will have an old school way of doing something where he won't be able to da 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 da. I just think in Somerset and Mills, you have an actual genius, but the fire of youth is what stirs Somerset to complete this. He finds out it's a big case that is a serial killer. But I don't know, man. If he doesn't have this kid chomping at the bit, I don't know if he just doesn't let it go. I don't know if he just goes, "Oh, well, he'll get to 7, then he'll be done." Oh well. But Mills chomping at the bit and like pushing him and challenging him to push himself to do extra legal stuff to get on that FBI watch list with Homeboy's, you know, library card, to kick open the door to go into his apartment. All these things that Mills does to push the story help Somerset's genius to shine. Maybe I'm being too highfalutin on it, but I think that's a cool thing about their relationship.
No, but I also think that it's sort of the same thing with Riggs and Murtaugh, where it's like you're keying in on the fact that kind of the two halves make a whole. That
Yes.
they're filling in parts of the other person that they're where there might be gaps that that character themselves don't even see the gaps. And it's sort of
Mm.
like the purpose of this story is to fill in those gaps and sort of show the other person what it is they're missing that is filled by their partner. Ends a lot more tragically in Seven than it does in Lethal Weapon, but I do think that's
Hmm.
a clutch element of any great duo story is that idea of it's almost like a romance. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the
Hmm.
day, it's a little bit Jerry Maguire, you complete me. Just without the sexual overtones, or at least overt sexual overtones.
Show me the retirement.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but I totally agree with that. So, in that spirit, are there any duos that maybe if we say, obviously, I would have to mention Reggie Hammond and Jack Gates from 48 Hours, which I
Mm,
think it gets the credit for being a duo and being sort of that salt and pepper duo that they liked in the 70s and early 80s. But I got to say, it really blew open the doors of what a duo could be and how characters could complete each other. Because Reggie's not a cop; he's a wild convict. With
yeah.
Jack Cate's words, running around searching for his own ends, trying to get some money that he's owed from other fucking criminals who just happen to be on a crime spree. And he knows a little bit to help a cop to track him down. But basically, they're just running around willy nilly. And as I talked about in the episode I did with Anastasia about Eddie Murphy, is Eddie Murphy the greatest? When Eddie Murphy adopts the power of the cop, when he says, "Jack, give me your badge and I'll go in and intimidate these crackers in this bar," it's just that's an explosion in a lot of people's minds about what's possible. Like people talk about representation. I don't need no representation to be standing next to some white motherfucker and just be like, "Hey, I'm here." I need him to go, "You shut the fuck up." You know what I mean? I need him to
Yeah.
be impactful upon the situation. And Eddie Murphy was that. And it was like him showing like what it's like to have somebody come into a place that they're ridiculously outnumbered and just bluster their way through because they have some authority, some ephemeral authority of a badge or something. That being wielded by a black dude, man, I gotta say, man, it's a moment for your ass.
I can see how that would be the case. I mean, bringing up 48 Hours brings up sort of that whole genre of 80s, 90s action duos, which really was kind of a heyday for the type of story we're talking about, because that
Hmm.
also brings to mind like White Men Can't Jump. That also brings to mind what was Money Train, which is sort of one of my favorite underrated, 48-hour ripoffs. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think obviously 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte is probably the purest distillation of that post Lethal Weapon formula. But that was going strong in Hollywood for a number of years.
Yeah, and also, I don't know. I think 48 Hours predates Lethal Weapon, but point still
Oh,
stands. It's
really?
it's yep. It's one of those things where I think that you talk about the duos, right?
Yeah.
Everybody having to be on equal footing. Do you think that it's necessary to be called someone's partner for it to be truly equal? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there are people we call partners, like I don't know,
Hmm.
Batman and Robin call each other partner. And the greatest stories they actually are. And some of the
Hmm.
more simplistic ones for kids and stuff, there has to be, "Hey man, that was great. Yeah, you got it, chum. I'll give you a boost over this wall." That
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of
yeah.
shit. It just depends on how the maturity dial, how is it turned for the story, whether he's a sidekick or a partner.
I think that's one of the great advantages of sort of the never ending nature of comic books because, yes, to I guess just to repeat what you said, Robin starts as a sidekick, very much subservient to Batman, and then grows into any number of other things relative to Batman. And I think you see the other great thing about comics, like duos kind of take shape naturally sometimes. And I'm thinking, I don't know that they're my favorite, but like certainly a classic comic book duo is something like Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, who were two characters who were created in wildly different times. Famously, Booster Gold, or excuse me, Blue Beetle was created as part of the Charlton stable of superheroes, purchased by DC, sort of like slowly integrated into their universe. And then Booster Gold was made up whole cloth in the late 80s by Dan Jurgens, I think as part of just to round out the Justice League International at a certain point. Um, so, like, those are two characters that were never meant to be partners and have never officially been partners in the capacity of, like, I choose you to go out and do daring do with. But, like, they ended up becoming a duo just because comics kind of are good at finding duos that work. Green Arrow,
Mm.
Green Lantern even comes to mind for that.
Yeah, I think, and it's just a testament to how great Green Arrow is because Green Lantern sucks ass and ruins everything he's involved with. And the fact that we even talk about it in reverent tones. I mean, obviously, Neil Adams drawing the hell out of it, and Denny O'Neil bringing certain subjects to comic book light really makes it good too. But geez, Louise,
Yeah.
what a bummer Green Lantern is on
Yeah.
all
I mean, look,
levels.
I will say in the conversation of the greatest duos, like Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, and Green Arrow, Green Lantern, neither one makes my list, but I'm just using them to illustrate a point, I think.
How about Fire and Ice? What are we doing here? No.
Ooh, man. Yeah, comics did really get into a rut where they were just looking for duos at a certain point, huh?
Jimmy and Joey. Basically, I think one of the ones as we glide into comic books, we'll save some of the Batman Robin talk for a little bit later. But I
Mm,
think along those lines of people who are their own heroes and they choose to hang out together and they choose to have their lives intertwined. I've never been a big fan of it because my main boy that I love so much pales in comparison to the other one. But when Spider-Man and Daredevil hang out,
mm,
there is something cool about it. There's something elemental about it. I've told it before. One of my favorite comic book memories as a little kid was watching all of the Earth basically fight Galactus in Midtown Manhattan. And Daredevil and Spider-Man sitting on a roof eating hoagies, talk about, man, we ain't gonna jump into that shit. There ain't no motherfucking way. We're gonna take our ass down there to fuck with them doing all that shit. Thor's down there, Iron Man, they got it. Let's just sit over here and make sure nobody gets robbed during this. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It was interesting, and it just showed like they are on this level of street superhero. I like them hanging out. I like them knowing each other's identities and shit. I just like it. It's really
Mm.
cool.
Well, and I think that is sort of the birth of the Marvel street level superhero too when you think about it. I mean, obviously Spider-Man and Daredevil have both always been street level, but it took the moment of going like, "Wait a minute. These guys would encounter each other and they are on the same level, and why wouldn't they hang out?" To really cement the idea that Marvel has those tiers of like you've
Mm-hmm.
got your Fantastic Four, and I've always liked Spider-Man and Johnny Storm being friends, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't hit quite as well as Spider-Man and Daredevil, who are literally like operating in the same neighborhoods, on the same rooftops, fighting the same villains, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm. Kingpin. They both they're Eskimo brothers with the with each other over the Kingpin.
100%. But yeah, and I mean, there is something cool about that, though. It recalls the whole Superman Batman world's finest, but in a way that feels way less forced. Because
Mm-hmm.
Superman Batman always feels forced to a certain extent.
Okay, let's talk about it. We got to go there. Let's talk about it because I really was gonna. I made a little tiny list. Only one I've talked about so far is Spider-Man and Homeboy. But dude, ugh, Batman and Superman makes no sense, and I just hate that some of this like 50s 12-page story with a weird cover where they tell you the whole story of the cover type of thinking has permeated for the last 60 fucking years. Like
Mm.
that was a cute thing to do when they were just chums running around, and half the time Superman would be running on the street for some reason. Like, why are you running? You can fly. I'm just running down the street here. Gonna go talk to this hot dog vendor. Yeah, me and Jimmy Olsen try to get our steps in. Whatever the fuck they was doing to make it just be so pedestrian and Wayne boring, as it were. You know, I don't understand why this thought process of they could really truly be chums. I don't think that they should be enemies because I think that took hold last 30 years.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? So we got 50s type of thinking and versus 80s type thinking. 80s type thinking is, well, I'm street level and you're a god, so I gotta try to kill you with your own kryptonite. And then
Right.
50s is like, why wouldn't we be best buddies? You push planets, I knock out robbers. Makes total sense that we're, but it's like neither one makes any fucking sense, really.
I agree with that. I mean, I'm obviously a huge Superman fan. You're a huge Batman fan, and I don't think either one of us like has a huge grudge against the other. But like, yeah, they're just characters. They're two great tastes that do not taste great together, and that's a duo that 100% just comes from sort of corporate profit seeking. Um, it was just, at the time when they met up and started palling around, Superman was the top selling comic book hero in the world, and Batman was the second top selling. So why don't we put them in a book together and see if that sells millions of copies? Like, that's all that was.
Well, it's funny that like even certain, I mean, I'm not gonna get off on a long tangent, but like teams.
Mm,
The whole just I remember we did a thing on teams with Eric Barnes, I do believe. Yes, and we talked about all the different type of teams that there are and what are great team books. And it really started to dawn on me that like the Justice League is only together for like marketing and for when a kid goes to the store and he's got $5 to spend on a comic. One of them has all the heroes in it, and one of them has one hero in it. It just
mm,
becomes an economic decision at that point. And it's like, because like the point's been made a billion times. Superman doesn't need anybody in the Justice League, and it's very hard to design a Justice League story where Superman is preoccupied, but not in a boring, sucky way, where he just flies off panel for a while, like they used to do with Apollo in the Authority comics. Just like the Armada is 47 parsecs that way. Just go fuck them up, and we'll fight ninjas in this rooftop right here.
yes.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Without doing that type of bullshit, it's really hard to design a story where you need all these Justice League dudes and Superman. I'm not saying it's impossible at all. Grant Morrison did it pretty good.
Yep.
I think Mark Waid did it pretty good. Some people do it pretty good. But I'm just saying, for a Batman and Superman story, there's this extra layer of extracurricular bullshit. Like, I'm Superman and I can't like read this code key a billion times and figure out the code. I need to call Batman because he's smarter than me. It's like, not really. You don't
Yeah.
you don't need Batman for this, and the Batman will be like, oh man, I detectived all the way up, and now Amazo is here. If only I knew a guy. Yes,
Yeah.
I hate that. It's like it's so you're right. It's like you got Superman and my Batman. You got Batman and my Superman. It's just it's like, well, let's throw these both away and get the flavor that we want. Is
And I mean, I think that that ultimately is the argument in favor of Spider-Man and Daredevil, where it that seems to come less from like a profiteering place and more from a natural story realization of like, oh wait, why not? Like, there's no good reason not to. And I think that
yeah,
that is sort of an integral part of a duo. I mean, I'm struggling to think, even in comics, which has a long, rich history in the Batman and Superman tradition, of throwing together two wildly disparate things. I feel like that seldom works. I think a good duo really needs to occupy the same milieu. And that can be a really strange milieu, but it needs to occupy the same milieu. And honestly, that kind of
hmm.
that gets me thinking about Deadpool and Cable, which I know they don't have as long an in-story history as maybe some of the marketing or internet talk would have you believe, but there was a series, and I forget if it was the Deadpool series by Joe Kelly or if it was a Cable series, but there was a series in the early 2000s that really put them together almost as a lark because they were both created by Rob Liefeld, but having a meta character that can break the fourth wall like Deadpool paired up with a character who is so self-serious and with such a loony bonkers only in comics backstory as Cable, suddenly it's like, Oh, that does make a little bit more sense than you would think on the surface, because they can exist in the same milieu, even though they're going to have ludicrously different reactions and MOs within that world. You know what I mean?
Oh, and real quick, this is my off the top of my head pitch to fix fucking Deadpool 2. Um the stupid kid doesn't exist. None of that bullshit exists. It's just Deadpool's gonna do something, and Cable has to come back to prevent it.
Mm,
And then they become buddies while Cable is still trying to actively prevent him from doing stuff. Cable comes back with the intent to kill him, figures out that he can't, and then they have to do a bunch of buddy shit to make sure this horrible future doesn't happen. Done.
mm,
I just think that's it. Like I just thought about it just now because it's like the whole point of that movie being bad is Cable and Deadpool don't get to hang out.
mm.
They're in the movie together, but they don't really get to hang out and make a relationship and go from, oh, this is a fucking goofball, I want to laser his face off, to this guy's kind of okay, I wonder why I still got to kill him, to this guy saved my life, to damn, this guy might be the key to the universe. That arc would have blown people's fucking minds,
Sure.
So
I
I don't
agree with
know.
that. No, I mean, I think that my thoughts on that movie are well documented, but also the whole problem with that movie is they marketed it as, oh, you're going to see the Deadpool Cable duo, and then their interactions in the movie couldn't be any more underwhelming than they were. And
Yeah.
it's like, at least your idea would put them together to have the kind of super serious slash ball busting hijinks that you would want out of a duo like that.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Speaking of the ball busting adventures, basically, do you like? I think the best duos really complete each other, and I
Mm-hmm.
just have to talk about Power Man and Iron Fist
Yes, sir.
because I just think of there are so many characters that they force to team up, and there are characters that are incomplete without each other that suck when they're not together, like Hawk and Dove, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think there's a reason why Hawk and Dove haven't exactly set the universe on fire as far as popularity, because it just the different origins of the different Hawks and Doves, you can go dive through that if you want to. Fandom, Wikipedia, handle your business. I'm just merely stating that they kind of suck. We're gonna do an episode about character design and costumes. Their costumes kind of suck.
Yes.
So their costumes kind of suck. They kind of suck. Their whole I'm a hawk, so I'm warlike and I'm a dove. It just sucks. Oh, that's bad. Power Man and Iron Fist, a guy who's like a hero for hire and a low level 70s kung fu master, and they kind of solve local cases. Like he's got a little international intrigue. Uh Power Man's got a little bit of a socio-political commentary. It's just that's a stew. That's a
It's
real stew.
No, it really is. And I think on the most basic level, right, it's just saying, who would you not want to get in a fight with, and picking the two most polar opposite versions of those people and
Right.
putting them together. But then
Mhm.
I think the way that their characters are rounded out, whether by design or not, is just kind of genius. Because, like you alluded to, like Luke Cage, socially conscious, poor man from the streets, Danny Rand, absolutely privileged asshole, billionaire inheritance, never had to work a day in his life. You put those two guys together, immediately there's opportunity for really juicy interactions and a lot of good comedy. And then just the way that they round out their personalities, where it's like Luke Cage takes no bullshit, Iron Fist does nothing but bullshit. And it's like you just keep putting those contrasts on top of each other, and it almost writes itself, which I think is what you can say about the best duos.
Oh, absolutely. And what you said earlier in regards to "You Complete Me,"
Mm.
a fucking Iron Fist comic by himself, just stop it. Just stop thinking that. Like fetch is not gonna happen. That shit's not gonna happen. They keep trying and they keep failing because it sucks. And no matter how many if they rebrand it and do whatever they want to make it more politically not a grenade. Whatever they want to do, it still sucks without that counterbalance. Because the whole point of these kung fu characters is they could beat everybody up. So you put them in a situation where, well, now we have to have some precision as to who we beat up. Now we
Mm.
have to have some discretion as to who we beat up and how we beat them up. Sometimes we won't be able to punch them. How can we punch some people to get into a position to do this intellectual thing to the bad guy? So on and so forth. One of my favorite Punisher stories, Punisher and his buddies fight their way up to the Kingpin, and the Kingpin just kicks the shit out of them, and they fucking leave. Sometimes you run into something that you can't beat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a big lesson. Punisher spent like 10 issues trying to get up to the level to fight the Kingpin and just got housed in like like a one-page fight. Just got solely housed, which is what would happen to a
Yeah.
60-year-old man to a 60-year-old man fighting a 55-year-old man who's 400 pounds of solid muscle who fights ninjas. You're gonna beat up Frank Castle. It's just
Yeah.
gonna happen.
You're
And
gonna
so
have a bad time.
right. And so with the kung fu character, it was like there's always, Iron Fist could fight 50 guys, but then Power Man could come in and help him. You know what I mean? Or Power Man could get overwhelmed by a bunch of guys like dropping a bunch of heavy tonnage on him, but they can't because they're getting kicked in their necks by his buddy. They really made, and I loved how sometimes they were made to look really foolish in other books because they
Yeah.
just weren't quite on the level of other heroes. Like they try to they're assigned to protect Matt Murdock, and he gives him the slip to turn into Daredevil. And then as Daredevil, he just basically Spider-Man, like how Spider-Man fights whole teams, Daredevil just fought them in that manner, and they just couldn't grasp them, they couldn't handle them. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's what would happen. But that doesn't mean those guys aren't great for all types of hard traveling heroes-esque adventures all throughout the 80s and stuff. So I just felt like, and also they never really emphasized Danny's money. They always kind of made him either reject his privilege or he came back and the Rand fortune had been misappropriated or something. So he
Sure.
was in the ghetto, not
Sure.
as some sort of charity thing, like, oh, I could buy this whole building, or just sort of kick with my feet up on this desk until a femme fatale comes in and gives us a case. You know what I mean? They kind of didn't worry about that. They worried about the fact that Danny and Luke had to pay the bills, and they were going to have to save old lady McGillicuddy from these guys who are menacing her store. Oops, they turned out to be bulletproof and have nuclear weapon hands.
Mm.
Looks like it's a job for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that sort of shit.
I also, you keyed on something there that I think makes a lot of sense too, in terms of the "you complete me." There's a sense with Power Man and Iron Fist that, like, man, if these two really got on the same wavelength, they would just be unstoppable. But
Mm-hmm.
there's always just a little bit of fuck uppery between
Mm-hmm.
them that, like, keeps them from reaching that full potential. So, like, they're never going to be the Avengers, but in your mind, you're like, they should be. And I think
Mm.
that little bit of, like, man, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for them to get even better at what they do. I'm waiting for them to hit the
Mm.
big one because I see it. I see that potential in the
Mm-hmm.
synthesis of these two guys. That's such a real draw, right? It's such
Mm-hmm.
a real, like, it keeps you hooked and it keeps you wanting to see them together because it's like, I know they're awesome together, even if they can't quite see it, which I think is dope.
I mean, and last things last, I know they've probably done a story of this, but like the fact that they never kind of were just like, okay, Luke, I'm gonna teach you like 6 moves.
Right.
You'd be able to beat up the Thing if you knew these 6 moves. You
Right.
know what I mean? Because
Right.
what Bendis ended up doing was just sort of like giving him like I think the Wrecker's crowbar,
Mm,
and he could end like this weird power jump from like 3 or 4 tons to about 40 or 50 tons. And he's like winning the Avengers, and he's this respectable guy with a wife and all this shit. I've railed against that before. I'm not going to rehash that, but just like that, just took them all out of the ghetto, all out of hanging out with the people, all out of what would make them have to be a duo. Because why would Luke Cage have to be a duo with Danny Rand when he's hanging out with Iron Man and Ares and Jesus and whatever the
right.
fuck? It
Right.
doesn't make any sense. It just stripped and in that trying to make him so interesting and make him his own man, they stripped away what made him interesting in a certain milieu, in my personal opinion. And it was just like they just I don't know, they just let it go. And then they tried to bring back the magic, but then it's like, wait a minute, if you hang out with the Avengers, you do all this type of shit, why are you back in the hood with Danny Rand again, other than
Yeah.
us just doing some stories that way? It's just like you got to make a real concrete reason. Like Jessica Jones and Homegirl's daughter got killed by the Beyonder. Too bad. He goes
Yeah.
into a fucking spiral and ends up being basically broke as hell and rejecting all his homies, and the only one who can get through to him and help him is Iron Fist. And slowly they rebuild their relationship, and he comes back to superhero dumb on the level that he's actually comfortable with, where he's actually helping people instead of trying to
Mm.
punch gods and fastball special Wolverine up to fucking the High Evolutionary's crotch or whatever the fuck that he's doing in those adventure stories. He
Yeah.
goes back to the real shit that made him happy, because that's the only thing that can make him happy, because now his fucking chick and his baby are dead because they suck. I'm sorry. I just I want them wiped
Ed,
out.
man, Ed is just casually fridging characters over here. That's what we're doing on this podcast.
Dude, women, children, anybody could get it. Alfred, whoever. Nah. So yeah. So speaking of which, I
Mm.
think now would be a good time to broach some of the Bat characters, because I
Okay.
think that there's like 100 duos in
Hmm.
there. Even if you're just talking about Batman and Robin, there's like Batman and Robin are like the fixings on a Whopper. You could put them in 2000 type of way iterations.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I think the point you made earlier about are Batman and Robin truly partners, or is Robin a sidekick to Batman, is an interesting point, and it sort of makes you think about stories that play with that dynamic. And like, I don't want to sound like a broken record because I know that we've talked about this before, but it really makes me appreciate again the Grant Morrison Batman and Robin with Dick Grayson Batman and Damian Wayne Robin. That is
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite all-time duos in comics, let alone in the Batman mythos. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that we got so precious little of, and I don't think it hits quite the same when it's Nightwing and Robin. It's just in those specific circumstances of Dick Grayson taking over the Batman mantle. Um, but it does all the great things that we've talked about so many duos doing, from Riggs and Murtaugh up to Power Man and Iron Fist. Like, you get the personality clash, you get the way that they approach situations and handle things being different. You get that feeling of like, oh my God, these guys should be unstoppable together, but they just can't get past their own shit. But I want to see them work it out because it's going to be so great when they do. Like, there's so much of that good storytelling meat in Morrison's Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I think the main thing I love about it, because I really revere it basically almost as much as you do.
Mm,
I think what's interesting is everybody's trying to, it's just a beautiful portion of time where everybody's trying to earn their mantle. Like, Damien is trying to be less of a psycho and more of a Robin, and he's failing at that. And Nightwing, Dick Grayson, is trying to be kind of the Batman that he kind of wishes he had on a certain level, but
sure.
also he can't he I don't know, this kid is so much wilder than he was. So he finds himself in this weird crossroads of like, I gotta rein this fucker in, but if I rein him in too hard, he's gonna slit everybody's throat towards sleep. You know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of, yes. And I think that tension is so key to great duos because at its heart, like a duo shouldn't just be a protagonist randomly split into two people. I mean, the conflict between a duo should live at the heart of a story. And I think that's where it goes back to me saying, like, all of these are almost like romances, where no matter what external circumstances are thrown at them, the ultimate question is still will they, won't they? Can they not make it work? And like, I can't think of a duo that really trades on something other than that dynamic that would be worth throwing into this mix that we're talking about.
Huh. That's an interesting thing to say.
Oh, okay.
Cause no, because I think it gets to the heart of how few partnerships there actually are, where it's like there's always seems to be some sort of person at the head. And I'm thinking of like, and you talk about them being like romances, that brings me to like, well, is Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm, are they a duo? I know they're a
Mm,
quad because they got those other two fools with them,
sure.
but they are the people who are committed to each other. I guess, Sue is committed to her brother because of familial shit, but get in front of God and country and all the superheroes and proclaim your love for your wife. And she's this immensely powerful You can't really call it telekinesis, but let's just go with that.
Sure.
uh Telekinesis bubble maker, and you're like the smartest person in the world, and you can stretch your mind and blow all this different shit. And I just think sometimes I think of duos as, if they just decided to fuck everybody up, would people be in trouble? I think Batman and Robin as evil would up a lot of shit. I think Mr.
Sure.
Fantastic and Mrs. Fantastic as evil would fuck up a lot of shit. I think Spider-Man and Daredevil as evil would fuck up a lot of shit.
Sure.
They'd have to send more powerful characters than them to stop them from doing what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, I see that completely. The other thing, though, that comes to mind when you talk about, Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, I think the thing that's endemic to most comic book married couples is that the writers, or maybe the publishers, I don't know, are so committed to keeping those marriages idealistic that it robs the duo of all the things that make a duo interesting. So whether that's Superman and Lois Lane, whether that's Reed Richards, Sue Storm, whether that's Wally West and his wife, or Barry Allen and Iris, or whatever, it's like they're they so always have to be the perfect couple that the tension, that whole, oh, they're opposites, they've got friction between them, they need to find something in the other person to complete them, that gets thrown out the window. And then it's just, well, you do this thing while I do this thing, and then we're going to confab together, and we're going to share what we've learned, and oh yeah, then now we've got a way to move forward, which is fine, but that's all it is fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think also when you look at like couples that never really got to be a duo, and I wish they really were. I really wish Daredevil and Elektra were a real duo.
Oh
They're
yeah.
just always at each other's throats so much, and when they become a duo, it's usually when one of them is under the thrall of the hand, or something weird. Is kind of like how you're saying that Power Man and Iron Fist are loving ships in the night that that pass each other, or that rub hulls but don't quite. I don't know, why would you want them to crash into each other? This metaphor is fucked up. Anyway, the point is, like, they never quite meet. There's always some friction or some tension or some space in between their ideologies that messes it up and makes them not be able to be like as powerful as they could be together. I
Mm.
think very much so that's Daredevil and Elektra. There's always a little bit of schism of whether it's just her just murking fools and stabbing people in the neck, where he just kind of conks them, or if it's just what is evil? What's the nature of evil? Can you be a good guy in control of the fucking hand?
Right.
All this different shit that they've done to them. Now I guess Daredevil's technically the leader of the Fist, the guys who fight the hand.
Mm.
Wait till you see the deadly fingers. The deadly fingers of the new Jason Aaron creation, where they just point at people and they die. Fucking
The index, they're
yeah.
coming in strong. The
Oh goodness.
flange. The
Yeah,
flange is
the
gonna be the new powerful.
phalanges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's a new villain that's about to take out the hand, the fist, and the fingers. He's called carpal tunnel syndrome. We gotta fight this guy with all of our might. Even the Kingpin's scared of carpal tunnel syndrome.
See,
He
I
can't
thought you
really.
were going to say the new organization is going to be The Rock, because Rock always crushes fist. Or no, what is it? Paper covers rock. I don't know. Whatever. So the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as far as do you have any ones that you're just like, I think this is an obscure one, and I'm the only one who like this, because I have one of those. If you don't have
Mm.
one.
Well, I mean, I have a few actually outside of comics,
Hmm.
that I think maybe are underappreciated, but are worth a little bit of a discussion. But if you have one that's like in the comic book realm, let's hear it.
Okay, I'll do it right now. Then, mine is, and this is probably so typical of people, of what I usually say, but Punisher and Microchip. I
Okay.
think there was a time that was awesome, because it really is one of the things that made sense. Like, the Punisher can't just he's from the 70s in the new computerized world of 1985. So how is Frank Castle supposed to get along in this new modern world? He gets with this guy who has like a son and has some crimes done to him, and now he's got a real hard on for crime, but he has no way to do anything about it. That's Microchip. And then Punisher is, I got all the skills in the world, but I need a little help pointing myself in the right direction. Need a little help navigating the modern quote unquote world of 1985 to 89.
Mm,
And so I need my guy. And Microchip was just there to like, crack codes, do all the guy in the chair stuff. And I think he might have been really one of the first guys in the chairs that wasn't Q
yeah.
and wasn't some fucker like Forge outfitting the X-Men with stuff. The guy in the chair that I grew up with as a youth was Microchip. And it was so scary when like the bad guys would find out that Microchip was just in a van a block away while the shit was going down and be headed over there. You're like, oh god, Microchip's gonna fucking die. And
Yeah.
it was just, there was something about, and then there's a I think it's an issue 9, a ninja, I think this is the issue, I might be getting confused, but a Will Spartatio drawn Punisher issue where a ninja or some fucking body shows up. Microchip's son gets killed. Microchip's son helped Microchip and Punisher do crimes, or stop crimes while doing crimes, and his son gets killed. and
Um,
and Punisher just sort of brings Microchip the body and drops it on him and goes, "Sorry, Micro," and just walks off. Like how and it's just like
phew.
he couldn't, because Punisher couldn't feel
Yeah.
what it was, because he mourned for his kid. He knows how Microchip feels, and he's put all of his feelings in all this war on crime. So I don't have nothing for you. You know what I mean? It was really fucked up, and Microchip kind of harbored that for a while. And I think it was dope as fuck when Garth Ennis wrote the Punisher Max line, where Microchip started helping the feds to catch the Punisher.
Yeah.
And one of his main things was, you left me out to dry when you went to prison and different shit like that happened. I had to scrounge for myself. I was just as guilty of all these crimes as you. I had to make for myself, and you couldn't even show me any love when my kid died and all this kind of shit. It's just like, fuck you. And like Micro turned on him, and in the end, when Punisher has to like take out Micro, for people of my generation, that felt like goddamn Superman being like, Lois Lane, I gave you too many chances. You try to stab me with your kryptonite claws. You gotta go.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like for Punisher fans of my generation, from the like 80s on up, reading them as little baby kids where we couldn't understand the violence, up to now when we kind of yearn for it as a catharsis against urban environments.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Fucking there's that whole span of time, bro. It really made me feel. So I just got to give props to the fuck you, Gino Toretto. Sorry, I just got to give props to, yeah, Punisher and Micro being that maybe the first real fallout of a partnership I saw. I saw it begin and end. And,
Yeah.
and comics don't afford you that. They don't afford. They're always stuck in the stasis of us being perfect partners forever, or occasionally being enemies, but then getting back to being perfect partners in this inevitable loop. But Punisher being best friends with Micro to killing him, it was, you never see it in comics. You really never see it.
Honestly, man, like I think you just made a really strong case for how to make a Punisher movie work.
Mm,
Is make the Punisher and Microchip deuteragonists, right? Who go through a similar thing of like, crime takes my family and leaves me with nothing, and I need vengeance. And this other person has the thing that I don't have. In Microchip's case, the means and the killer instinct. In the Punisher's case, the ability to navigate the world in a stealthy, sophisticated way, and then break that partnership up for any one of a number of different reasons, right?
mm-hmm.
Like they just find out we can't actually do this together. Like that is a great way to both revel in and sort of question the whole concept of the Punisher at the same time, and leave you on kind of an ambivalent note, because whether it's the Punisher or whether it's Microchip who lives in the end, somebody is not coming out alive.
Mm-hmm.
I think, dude, that's the argument for a movie right there.
Dude, and to be fair, I think they tried to do something like that in the Punisher series, but Microchip was like a secret agent type CIA guy or
Mm,
something, and all this different shit. It's just no, 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 no. Edward Snowden meets, I don't know, any number of assholes who think they're vigilantes, that they didn't think they know what to do. Just Edward Snowden, who would link up with the most famous vigilante in the world.
dude, you know what?
That's kind of what it was. It wasn't like I'm a CIA shill who's done with the CIA now. It's more like I'm an activist. I'm a revolutionary, and I want to be
Sure.
revolutionary with you because you're a physical force. I'm a mental force.
It weirdly makes me think Paul Dini wrote a graphic novel called Darkest Night, which was actually autobiographical about he was writing on Batman the Animated Series and he got like mugged and beat like almost to death by somebody random on the street, and he wrote this graphic novel as a reflection on like how sort of dark and insular his thinking became and how he was connecting to Batman in like all the wrong ways of
Mhm.
like wanting to hurt people and wanting to get revenge and all that. Like that's almost the template I see for Microchip and Punisher. Like
Mhm.
Microchip should be like a Paul Dini type of guy, like a true blue nerd, out of shape, like has all this esoteric knowledge in his head that the real world doesn't really appreciate, and then gets so fucking wronged that he's just like, I just want to go out and fucking kill everybody who deserves it. And then give that guy a reckoning with like, oh my God, what am I becoming? And I
Mhm.
think that's a hell of a story, man.
Dude, and the beautiful part about it is you can just make up some new characters. Fuck them. 'Em. They'll never let me do it anyway. But,
Uh,
so what were some of the duos that you had that were outside of the comic
Okay,
book?
so before we return to movies, I did want to make the observation that kids' cartoons actually make great use of duos. I think
Hmm.
maybe the most iconic one currently being SpongeBob and Patrick, right?
Mhm,
Where it's
mhm.
like Patrick is kind of dumb enough that he is more of a sidekick to SpongeBob. But if you go outside of that, I think of something that was definitive in my childhood, which would be like Ren and Stimpy. And
Yeah.
and even on a less caustic angle, as far as Nicktoons go, Rugrats with Tommy and Chucky.
Yep,
Like, there's
yep.
just there's something so great when you're telling those little bit more low stakes stories, and especially when you want to get into comedy. And I do think this goes back to like the Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello of it all, where it's like ever since people have been doing pratfalls, you've had duos, right? But when you're doing those stories for kids that you need to always have conflict, but it's never about saving the world, there's nothing better than having like one person who's always getting into trouble and the other person who's kind of a scaredy cat, or one person who's always super rational and one person who's always super emotional, right? Like there's so much mileage in those contrasts, and I think that
Mhm.
really gets distilled even down to like Bugs and Daffy in classic Looney Tunes, like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck. The one, I never take anything seriously, and the other one, I'm so self serious I can't stand you. Like that is good shit, man, and I think that it's worth giving it up.
Yeah, I think as far as, the cartoons, it's interesting how, like, they have so many characters that you it's almost like I watch Survivor. It's my only reality TV proclivity. I just love it. I think it's great.
Uh-huh.
And in the show, they have these things called alliances, and there'll be like 5, 6 motherfuckers that are all voting together, but they're really like 2 people who are
Sure.
really kind of running it. And they have these 3 foot soldiers. I think of these teams that way. So who are the actual who's the true alliance duo in the Thundercats, let's say? Who are
Mm.
the 2 people that actually stir the drink and the other ones are on the outside?
We know, right? It's Lino and Panthro. Like,
It
come on.
is Lionel and Panthro.
Of course it's Lino and Panthro.
It's definitely Lionel and
It
Panthro.
sure as hell isn't Wily Kit and Wily Cat, I'll tell you that much.
Dude, although one could say that Snarf is in there, man.
Oh,
Snarf might be. I think the true alliance. I think when they if they got down to the top two, as they used to do in the early seasons of Survivor, and there had to be an odd man out, I think Panther would be like, "What the fuck? Why am I on the outs?" Snarf raised me since I was a little Snarf, you know.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think Snarf and Lion-O are the power couple, and everybody
Fair enough,
else is
man.
on the outs.
You're not wrong on that one. Snarf,
Oh,
underappreciated as far as those 80s, we gotta have something in here for the kids goes, you know?
hey, man, he used to stand on his little tail and shit. It's kind of interesting. He's like a lizard cat Ewok.
It is kind of weird too that you're a race of humanoid cats and you have a like a non-bipedal still animal but can talk your language type of cat. Like That's some weird evolutionary bullshit going on there.
Yeah, I think maybe he's like I think he's just a Thundercat, but he's sort of challenged in a lot of
Oh,
ways. So
no.
I just think they're just like, hey man, just don't worry that he's different. He's just a cool guy, and he's just like how Lockheed was just a guy who got mutated weird for a while, and then they kind of switched it back to Lockheed being a dog because they looked at the whole stories, and the stories were always Lockheed, get over here, I'll beat your ass. And it's like if Lockheed was a person, you wouldn't want
Yeah,
anybody to talk to him that way. You wouldn't want anybody to talk to a dog that way either. But you know what I'm saying? Like in the stories, they'd be like, "Hey, Lockheed, get over here, dummy, and teleport me over here and do all this shit." If he was a guy,
right.
they wouldn't, that would be kind of demeaning. Just like if Pluto was a guy, that age old argument: if Mickey's a mouse and Donald's a duck and Pluto's a dog, then what's Goofy? It's like, ooh, that's kind of wild. So that was the first edition of that Thundercats problem we were talking
Yeah,
about.
fair enough.
Like, but yeah, so I also want to give it up to like Hopalong Cassidy and whoever the fuck and the Cisco Kid and the other one and shit like that. They have had the westerns did kind of like Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. That westerns did kind of even as a mythical like penny farthing story book thing. Written by all those guys. It's so funny in the Wild Wild West. If you had glasses, you were just like, get your ass over there in that shop
Yeah,
and fold the gingham and do some shit. If you got glasses, you're not going to be a gunfighter. You're not going to be a big man. Take your four-eyed ass on over there and sit on that porch while the men shoot each other. It's like, wow,
right.
I want to see some glasses gunfighters. In all the movies, the guys with glasses never get the gunfight. But anyway, in westerns, they love the whole duo thing because it's like the back to back shooting it out, or
Mm,
I'm about to get hung by the populace. You shoot the fucking rope and ride two horses, and I jump on one. It's like the duo thing works really well in westerns. I think it works really well in crime stories. My girlfriend falls asleep to novels on tape, and she listens to fucking Spencer for Hire books, and
mhm.
Spencer and Hawk, I got to put them up there as a duo. First of all, the motherfucker wrote like 87 books about them. So you got to give it up for the
Uh-huh.
longevity of the partnership. But like Hawk is like, I hate the word street smart because just say smart. Just say smart. And when we pan over to the character and we see that they're black and they have tattoos on their face or whatever, then you could say street in your head or whatever if you want to. But like, goddamn, he's just a smart guy who isn't some milk toast, like, you know, non-character. He's
Right.
got edges. He's a black guy. Da, 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 da. Anyway, Hawk was so cool. He was always a physical threat, like knocking fools out, but he always knew how to approach situations in a way that Spencer for Hire doesn't know. Spencer would be wanting to go on guns blazing kind of, and Hawk would be like, now let's think about this here, and this it was like, I'll just say it out like this: the only and the best magical Negro I've ever seen is Hawk. Hawk Hawk was smart and great and seemed to be pretty much equal partner in the stories. He never used his magic to help white people. There wasn't
Mhm,
ever like, oh, I'm Hawk. Let me go jump on a grenade for you, Spencer. Hawk like, how about we vacate this way to get the fuck away from the grenade? You know what I mean? He
mhm.
wasn't somebody's loyal servant. He was a guy with his own fucking life, and I think it might have been the first time I had been exposed to it in literature. If I had been reading those books in the '80s when they were published, um, I think that would have been revolutionary at the time. Because most of the time, if there's a black guy and a white guy in those stories, or a white guy in any sort of minority, it was just like, "Hey, Wong, go over there and take a bunch of bullets while I get into this safe or something." You know what I mean? It was always
Yes.
go over there and get fucked up while I go be a hero, and then I'll come back and find your body and go no to the heavens, and then I'll go make love to a blonde to get over it, and then I'll shoot the bad guy in the fucking head at the end. You
Right.
know what I mean? Fuck you and your family, and
Right,
fuck you and
right.
your goals because you never really had any because the author didn't give a fuck about you. But Hawk wasn't like that.
Well, so everything you just said, I think, is twisted into even more of a delicious genre subversion in the movie Collateral. And
Nice.
talked about it before on this show, but I want to bring it up in this context because the Jamie Foxx character and the Tom Cruise character in Collateral are very much written as a classic duo. Even I would say in the vein of something like 48 Hours or Lethal Weapon,
Yes.
but it's turned on its head because Tom Cruise is both the deuteragonist and the antagonist of the movie, and it's shown from the jump. But then everything you were just saying about how, like, the minority character is always played in relation to the white character, essentially the premise of Collateral is Tom Cruise drafts Jamie Foxx into that role against Jamie Foxx's will, and he's too much of a milquetoast dude to get out of it. And the movie is about him learning to get out of it. And
Mhm.
like, that's dope as shit.
Yeah, I mean, when he crashes that car, when he's like, "You know what? Fuck it then,"
Yeah.
and he just blazes through and crashes the fuck out of the car. It's like, damn, dude, like he grew a pair, was so big it was the airbags that saved him. His nuts grew so big they saved him
Yes.
from the crash. You know,
Yeah.
I love that type of shit. I love anything where, yeah, the character. Oh, in that respect, greatest movie duos, and we're keeping it Oreo. Man, my main man, Reginald Vell Johnson and fucking Bruce Willis, man.
Yes.
They're great buddies in Die Hard. I mean, and it's so what's so beautiful is yes, Al Powell or whatever is a classic sidekick, but what makes him a partner is that they know definitively what is going on inside. They know it because um, John McClane is seeing it firsthand, and Al believes him. So they
Mhm.
are on the same rope of information. They're the ones in the whole place that have the information. Agents Johnson and Johnson and the fucking police captain and the fucking news people, they're all just running around making up scenarios, doing whatever, but they're the only two that have the knowledge and the information. And that de facto makes them partners, and everyone's against them. In the classic Western, back to back, shoot everybody. Everybody's against them. And they come out on top. And of course, they put that part at the end where Powell has to actually save the hero
Yes.
from it's just I man, Stephen E. D'Souza and Jeb Stewart wrote the original draft, but Stephen E. D'Souza, Jeb Stewart, and John McTiernan just kicked ass on that story. I Everybody talks about Die Hard being so perfect, and it's going to be that thing that our kids and our kids go. Like when I hear, I read a screenplay book, and this guy was like, "I haven't seen an action movie that good since Gunga Din," and I'm like, "Bro, get the fuck out of here with that shit. You were insane.
Uh-huh.
What the fuck? We're gonna sound like that in a few years, but they're not gonna get how it wasn't about a CGI monster eating another CGI monster with such verisimilitude in a 4D Xbox theater where they throw saliva on you when the monsters fight, or whatever the fuck's gonna take place in the future. You know what I'm saying? Or some chip in your head where you jizz when you take my breath away comes on. It isn't that. It's us
That's the
with the
future liberals want. No.
it's just us, and this time with the stuff that we're available and looking up at that screen and seeing just all these events play out. I mean, the screenplay is still tighter than 99% of screenplays
Oh
every
yeah.
year. Every single year, that screenplay, if it was just we just wiped everybody's minds and put that fucking thing back on the market. But maybe not the screenplay as it was, but what they ended up doing. Like if we just
Yeah.
shot that movie independent and we're just like, hey, look at this movie we got. You could sell it every year up to now, I think.
But there's something, speaking specifically to McLean and Powell, like there's something so primal to the difference between them, inside and outside. Like there, you know what I mean? It's so
Mm-hmm.
simple that, like, yes, there is that unbridgeable divide in the classic romance setup of like
Mm-hmm.
they should be together but they can't. Why? Because one is trapped inside and one is trapped outside. And like, that sounds dumb, but it's brilliant in its simplicity. And I,
Yes.
like, again, that's something that I think makes a great duo is like you have to bring it down to just very primal things that keep them from being the synthesized one person. What are those divides? And like when you can get that right, you get a great duo. And actually,
Okay.
hold that thought. I
No.
just want to say
No.
real quick, as we're talking about Reginald Bell Johnson, people might hate it looking back, but fucking Urkel and Reginald Vell Johnson in Family Matters, that's another example of that comedic duo I was talking about, where it's oil and water, but it just works. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
became the heart of that show.
You know, you did that, Bill. You did it.
I sure did. I sure did.
I mean, I totally agree, and I would entreat anybody with a modern perspective to go back and look at the episode where Urkel plays a thug from the streets. He plays a cousin of Urkel's. Is just a hardcore gangster. And Al Powell has a classic pull your pants up type of bullshit conversation with him. And man, it might be the funniest thing ever committed to celluloid or tape or whatever they use. But I'm talking about Urkel with his like lip jutted out, like, yeah, you don't know me. I'm from the streets. It's just the funniest goddamn Jaleel White playing another character as a. It's so funny. I feel it in my bones. I'm vibrating thinking about the scene. Just go look that up. I think that there's a bunch of clips of it on Twitter, but it's an episode where I guess Urkel's streetwise cousin comes to town and starts, disobeying curfew and taking too many cookies or whatever the fuck was bad on TJF. He listened to one NWA song with the clean version from Kmart. Hey, don't listen to that stuff. They said F the police. Oh, Lord.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Shit.
Well,
Okay.
I'm not trying to sing the praises of Family Matters. I'm just saying, I was free associating that Reginald Bell Johnson was also part of another iconic duo.
No,
and let it not be said.
He's a team player. You noticed that right off the bat. Okay, I think Barry and his handler and Barry are a classic duo.
Yeah.
Because damn, that motherfucker. I haven't watched the entirety of this last season, so no spoilers, please. But like, okay. God dang it, that motherfucker just kept worming, or maybe he's dead now, I don't know, kept worming his way into Barry's heart over and over and over again. And it was just like, there's something, that whole, also, speaking of which, the dudes from Brokeback Mountain. No, but basically, I am mentioning the fact that like he couldn't quit that guy. Barry couldn't quit that guy for the longest time, and even when he tried to quit, then Homeboy became a woman scorned. So I'm just, in the classic parlance, you know what I mean? That sort of like that was a microchip Frank Castle relationship, sort of someone
100%.
kind of trading on somebody whose only skill and only ability is martial, and they have no direction. Like, damn, maybe I should just go hang out outside of sniper school and wait for the washouts to come out and be like, hey bud, got $57, couple jobs for you.
Hey man, like toxic relationships make for very compelling duos in fiction. That's just the reality.
I mean, how about making your ward jump on rooftops with you at night while you get shot at? Like, okay, the kid didn't ask for this, and that's why. And all the best Batman and Robin stories, they make him ask for it. You notice that? It's like, because if you just said, "Hey, chum," or "Hey, buddy," you came down to the basement one time, saw me putting on my gray drawers, and you're not gonna let it go, so you're gonna be my crime fighter. And that's one thing, but when it's like he's like trying to find out a way, he knows that he's with Batman and Batman can help him defeat the person who killed his parents. That hits so much different than, oh, you discovered my secret. You want to see a crossbow? You want to see some fucking genuine Catwoman panties? Come over here. It's better than that for obvious reasons, but it's like it's for someone that age to consent to a war on crime is kind of necessary for our modern minds. We can't just respect somebody just being like, hey, go do this. I think that's why I didn't enjoy Hit Girl that much. I liked her as a character. I thought she was dope. But if somebody is your actual dad and they've been shooting you and training you since you're a little kid, that to me is more like Kane and Batgirl from DC. The guy who raised Batgirl, shooting her as a kid, beating her up, not teaching her language so she could learn how to fight better, so she could just know body language. That sort of shit, I don't know, man. That it edges into that territory for me. But Batman and Robin just escapes it because of the plot armor they've put around. Like, okay, no. Dick Grayson was a willful 13-year-old who could already flip and stuff. So he was already low-key dodging bullets. Don't worry about it. He just needed an extra, that 8-week Bruce Wayne training program that has made everybody from Spoiler to Jason Todd to whoever you want to say, world beaters.
Yeah,
oh, man. Look, vomit.
Look, I am very much of the opinion that the canon Batman and Robin story needs to be that like Bruce Wayne took in Dick Grayson when he was like 9 or 10, and Dick Grayson wasn't fighting crime until he was about like 14, 15. And through a good chunk of those intervening 4 to 5 to 6 years, like Bruce Wayne was actively keeping him at a distance and trying to hide being Batman from him. Because I think the minute it turns into, now I've got this young ward. What can I do with him? That's like, that's some fucked up shit.
Yeah, the whole little soldier thing. I was talking to my buddy Grant Pardee on the Pop Culture League, and he was saying that I was saying something like basically Batman's like Coney. You remember Coney, that dude with all those child
Yes, Coney
soldiers?
2012. Yeah,
Yes,
totally.
you remember that shit?
Oh my god, yeah.
Fucking Batman. Batman is Coney. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like that's what's weird about so-called partnerships, and that's why I think when you look at even stuff that like I think some of the newfangled partnerships that I would love to see explored over the course of time are Miles and Spider Gwen and another
Mm.
2, 3, 4 movies. I just believe that there's something interesting about that. Maybe this is if you think of a headliner, drop it after this, but I think what's interesting about it is, as they say in the newest trailer, Spider-Man and Spider-Man falls for Gwen in almost every reality, and it never works out.
Mm.
I don't think they've seen this iteration of it though. And I think what's interesting about it is it doesn't even have to. I don't want to be that guy who's like, there was this song called Musique the Soul Child in the 90s or the early 2000s. And he sang this song. He's like, I don't want to pressure you. Something, something. You ain't even really gotta be my girlfriend. I just want to know some bullshit. And maybe sometime we can hang out, just chill. And it's like, I don't know a more simp anthem than that in my whole fucking life. I
Yep.
don't I don't know nothing more pusillanimous than that. Like, hey, I want to fuck, you don't? Okay, I'm gone. Like, I don't understand that. But I will say there are relationships that start out sort of romantical, and then you go, oh, there's actually no real chemistry there. I kind of thought I was supposed to like you like that. But now I
Mhm.
do see you as a pretty cool buddy. So fuck it. Let's go be crime fighters and let's go do whatever. I think if that's the way it goes, that's one thing. If it's them defying the nature of reality or something in being together and then not dying or not having anything bad happen to them, that could be cool. It's like almost any way they take that duo from them being the Batman and Robin to Spider people who are like younger and more faster and agile and have these different powers and they're adding to the Spider mythos. If that's how they choose to play it, if they choose to be a power couple and have kids, which they've done in multiple futures, whatever the fuck they choose to do with that is dope to me. If they make her be Venom, if at the end of this she gets Venom shit on her and becomes his Venom
Sure.
later,
Sure.
any iteration of Miles and Spider Gwen is the shit. So I'm just putting them up here for my early great duo.
Well, and you know who that has shades of actually is Invincible and Adam Eve.
Yeah, that's another good one, bro.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I say that is because I think Robert Kirkman, who wrote Invincible, I think did this on purpose, right? He took the classic, teenage superhero love story and turned it into something more than just I want to be with you, but my powers get in the way. And he did that by making them both completely competent superheroes who just struggle to figure out like what they want in life and if the other person can be a part of that. So it becomes this very real conversation and not just like your classic Smallville, I can't tell you my secret because it'll ruin your life, you know. And I and that ends up becoming, I mean, honestly, Invincible and Adam Eve might be one of my favorite comic book duos because the thing they never lose is the inherent conflict between them. And some of that is plot induced and some of it is character induced. But right up to the end, that book does an amazing job of acknowledging like these are two real whole people. And even if and when they make a commitment to each other, life is not going to just let them be in love all the time with no worries. And I think
Mm.
that that's the sort of thing that you could see out of Spider Gwen and Miles, where number one, there isn't the bullshit. I have to protect you. I can protect myself, blah, blah, blah. Like they're both spider people, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that then leaves room to have all the other conversations that any two people who maybe or maybe not are in love are going to have and are going to
Mm-hmm.
they're going to confront some of those things. What do I want? What's my timeline? What do I, what am I struggling with now that I need to get over? What do I need to put behind me? Like all that shit that either, works or doesn't in a romantic relationship, can actually be part of this superhero relationship, which is, it shouldn't feel as revolutionary as it does, but like superhero romance has for so long been stuck in either it's the damsel in distress that you have to save,
Mhm.
or it's the bad girl that you're gonna will you won't you with, Batman Catwoman style. Like, to
Mhm.
find a middle ground is so refreshing, and yeah, they've 100% set that up for Miles and Gwen.
Yeah, I wanna see that, "Ah, hey, Gwen, I'm just swinging in to say, oh my god," like, "Oh, man, I just saved this guy, he was looking so hot. I'm sorry, Miles, it doesn't mean anything," And it's like, "Fuck! I'm so
Uh-huh.
mad!" It's just this just the world of, like, the spider people and it dude, as we dismount here, I just wanna talk about the multiple partnerships of certain people from and we talked about Spider-Man. Spider-Man has been sort of a partner with Mary Jane. Spider-Man's been a partner with, Gwen. Spider-Man's been a partner with Black Cat,
Mm-hmm.
which I wish that had ever gone anywhere. That
Mm.
just seemed like something that could be so cool if they would allow it to go anywhere. Um, and when we look at like the spider, the whole everybody as a spider person, it's almost like Wolverine has his own subset. Like Spider-Man has his world of people that he hangs out with, most of them girls, that are all basically his age. And then Wolverine has this whole subset of world where he's like a father figure to everybody from in certain continuities, Rogue, Shadowcat, Jubilee. In certain aspects, it seems like it was sort of Armor's
Mm-hmm.
dad for a little
Mm-hmm.
while. It just seems like he's like McConaughey and Days of Confused. Like, hey, the girls keep getting younger, and I say the same age. Or whatever. Or no, they said anyway, you don't understand the fuck I'm saying. He's
Yeah.
just this dude, and again, it's fatherly. Don't be weird. But he's got this like he's almost stuck in a fatherly vibe since he's like so old and so experienced. And there's always a new person that could benefit from his guidance. But do you think that's an organic thing, or do you think they like the aesthetics of it on a corporate level?
See, I think it was organic when Claremont did it with Shadowcat, with Kitty Pryde, and I think it's been a little bit of a stale, editorial mandate ever since.
Yeah, I
Because
think so too.
that relationship worked so well for so long. Wolverine is the gruff, hard to love, but soft underbelly. Kitty Pryde is the I'm so outgoing and charming and disarming that I can find the soft underbelly even in this guy. And like you put those two together and you're seeing sides of both that you wouldn't otherwise. Like all that is so good that when they decided to graduate Kitty Pryde and start giving her more, of her own life outside of the X-Men, it became like, oh, this is now just a slot we need to fill.
Mhm. Mhm.
All the way down, like even when, and I think it was either Morrison or it might have been Joss Whedon after Morrison, but even when they introduced Armor and you could feel that relationship developing, I was a little bit like, oh, they're doing this again. Like Jubilee's
Yeah.
out, so now we got to do this again.
Mhm.
That's sort of my feeling about that duo. But to me, Wolverine and Kitty Pryde is like that's an all timer. I love that.
I think what was really dope about it, honestly, I know that the 80s was known for their white person ninjification, okay? I know that that was a big thing in the 80s. I bought one of them in Daredevil. I've sold most of the other ones. I still buy Daredevil. I've sold most of the other ones. Wolverine is sort of I like the fact that he's got a little samurai bushido code shit and he's not a ninja. I think
Right.
that's what's interesting about his for lack of a better word, Asian fetish in regards to the cultures in Madripoor, Japan, certain sections of China that he's been through to do all his machinations for years. I just think that there's something interesting about how those cultures affected him,
Mhm.
to give him a little bit of balance and mental tools to like to subdue the beast within. Like the Bushido code is exactly the sort of thing that somebody like Wolverine should adopt. You know what I mean? That and Zen and the art of motorcycle repair maintenance or whatever the fuck. Just
Completely.
read something to keep your emotions in check, because I don't need steel up my ass just because I fuck with the levels on your radio. You know what I mean? I don't need that. So, or you had a flashback to when fucking Sabretooth killed your girlfriend on your birthday or some shit. Like, I
Hmm.
don't need to get a shiv, 3 shivs of unbreakable metal because you can't process your feelings. So I love all that, but I think you are right that they just sort of grafted this corporate mentorship thing onto them. And then and we're talking to it when we did our X-Men reboot with Billy.
Yeah.
The whole like Wolverine's gonna be like the fucking leader of the X-Men school or something. I just think the only time that that makes sense is when there are hints that that character wants some sort of leadership, or doesn't think that they can to such a degree that they should, because that's a
Hmm.
great leader. Somebody who doesn't want it, that's a
Right.
great. He's never shown anything close to that, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm on record with this, but like, I've always liked Wolverine within the context of the X-Men being more of a supporting character. I think that's where he's most effective. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not even saying that he needs to be someone who kind of comes and goes as he pleases and you can't count on him because he's got his own shit happening. I like him being loyal to the X-Men and like not, but I think that loyalty needs to be expressed as like, he's not going to let any bad shit happen to these people because he legitimately cares about them. But it's not just anybody that he lets in emotionally. So it's like he's there to get drunk and stab people, all the time. But it's very, very rare that you get more of that out of him just because he is that guy and he does have that dark past and he does have to do, his Zen thing just to live a day to day life, which is why I've always appreciated, when the emotional connections are sort of few and far between. And I think the more sort of mentees you give him, the more people that he's opening himself up to, the more it kind of dilutes that character. So
Hmm.
when it's like, I'm Wolverine, I get drunk and I stab people, but I also have this weird soft spot for Kitty Pryde that even I try not to acknowledge. But there might be a little something going on between me and Storm, but I'm in love with Jean Grey, even though I don't admit it to anybody except her fucking husband because I like to piss him off. Having a handful of butts is great, but when it becomes
Hmm.
like, oh, I've got an emotional exception for everybody in the X-Men, I don't know. I don't like that version of Wolverine.
Yeah, and how far down does it go? It's like, oh, and I love when me and the fuzzy elf, we grab a few pints and then we start teleporting through dimensions. I love that sulfur in my beard. I just fucking that sulfur smell of the I don't know. And then when Colossus puts his hand on my ass to throw me at the Juggernaut, I just like that just how
There's a
many personal
special connection with everybody.
like, oh, and when Dazzler uses her laser finger to light my cigar, woo, buddy.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh god, how many? Yeah, you can't be close to everybody.
Not
But
when you're
speaking,
Wolverine.
yeah, okay. Speaking of which, as a last dismount, I just came up with this game. It is called uh Team Duo Survivor, and we're gonna look at groups and we're gonna distill them down to the duo that makes the fucking thing work. We did it
I,
with Thundercats.
yeah.
We did
You
it
know
with
what?
Thundercats.
I
Yeah.
like that, and I want to I'll just riff on that for a second. I do think you find in any ensemble, be it in comics and television and movies, whatever, a duo will always rise to the top, as
Mm-hmm.
exemplified, I would say, by Independence Day, where that
Yes.
movie is chock full of characters constantly interacting in all kinds of ways, but really it's Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. Like,
Yes,
that is the
absolutely.
movie.
Absolutely. So in Jurassic Park, it is the T Rex and the Raptor. I think we're getting the hang of this.
Oh, you get it. You get it. Yeah.
I mean, in the end, it is though. I mean, because you can't say the straw that stirs the drink is one of these fuckers that ain't been in half the movies. The
Uh,
Raptor and the T Rex have been in all those movies and were necessary in all of those movies. It
that's
seems like,
true. That's
you know what I
true.
mean?
Yeah.
I think those are the 2.
Yeah.
You can't really count human characters in there. All right, what's one that you have that you wanna try to distill down? Even if you don't have the answer yet, we'll
I
do
mean,
we'll get
geez,
it down.
you just had me do Independence Day. I mean, I don't know. This goes back to our conversation earlier. I was gonna say the Justice League, but it's like that's such a nonsensical team. But okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's do the Teen Titans, right?
Okay.
The
Oh,
classic Teen
shit!
Titans.
Oh,
It's a tough
yes.
one.
This is tough. Just off the top of my head, though, I say Dick and Corey, and they can all the rest of them could go screw. I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I think they're emblematic of the whole. Or if you want to say it's Dick and Corey, or it's Cyborg and somebody, or
Mm,
maybe somebody would say it was Raven and somebody, since she's in
mm.
all the fucking stories. You know what I mean? Is either a protagonist, a deuteragonist, a fucking an antagonist.
Well, I mean, the thing about Raven is like she carries a built-in story engine because it's like, oh, my dad is a demon that's going to destroy the earth. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, that's just always going to be there. That said, I know that they did a will they, won't they with her and Beast Boy for a long time, but then
Mm-hmm.
also like Beast Boy is such a nothing character,
Oh boy.
you
I mean,
know?
when you're dude, Beast Boy is the only DC character I truly believe would get the shit me too'd out of him in real life. Like he would get me too'd so hard, and
He's
I'm
just a
not.
creep.
It ain't easy being green. Garth, whatever the fuck, kicked out of Teen Titans for groping asses as an orangutan. Somehow he thought it was okay if he was a lower life form, you know?
Yeah, that was
Wrap,
definitely a product of the times, let's say.
yeah, just wrapping around chicks' waist as a snake. Ooh, what's going on? Fucking creep.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. For me, it's Dick and Corey just because they just I think on us in a survivor type of situation, they're the people who would vote everybody else out in the end to preserve their little shit.
Yeah.
Or like I said, the only thing I think I could compete with that is like Cyborg being like, I can manipulate the votes some kind of way with
You
my
know,
powers because he is a stalwart of the crew. I think he's the third stalwart of the crew, even more so than Donna Troy, in my
well, I was
personal
just
opinion.
gonna yeah, see, I was just gonna bring up Donna Troy, who I think gets forgotten a lot because she's not really a part of all the modern incarnations of the Teen
She's
Titans.
up there. Yeah. Now she would be in
Yeah,
the final four. The final four would be, I think, Corey and Dick, and I think her or Raven and Cyborg. And
yeah.
maybe it'd be her and Raven and Cyborg would be like, what the fuck? Voted out of the last council. Cyborg. He's a member of our jury sitting over there with his eye all red.
Yeah.
you know.
That's 100% what would happen, by the way, is he thought he's in an alliance and somebody
Right.
betrays him, and he's like, "What
Yep.
the fuck?" Yeah.
Oh man, I got 74 senses. You would have think I would have saw this blind side
Yeah,
coming.
completely.
Oh
Oh,
shit. Oh, I got one. Okay. Okay, let's do Avengers. Let's do the Avengers as either representative of the movies or the comics, like
ooh.
carte blanche. I think in the comics, I think it would definitely go down to Captain America and some fucking body. In the movies, I think there's a plethora of people you could actually choose from.
See, it's
Uh
interesting because if you're playing Survivor, I almost think that the movie Captain America wouldn't make it till the end.
yeah, you're right. You're right. They'd vote him. He's like Ozzy.
Yeah.
They'd vote him out. He's a challenge beast. We gotta get him the fuck.
I don't know any of these references because I've
Well,
literally never watched one episode of
okay.
Survivor.
On Survivor, they do physical challenges, and a lot of times people will excel in the physical challenges when it's sort of a team sport in the beginning. But as it gets to be a more individual game towards the end, and there's individual immunity, they'll vote out the stronger players and just
Mm,
be a bunch of pussies sitting in the sand doing these challenges poorly, but they got
mm.
all the strong people out. You know what I mean? So I think in a lot of instances, Superman, Freudian slip, Captain America would be one of the first to get voted out. Plus, he would probably play too honorably. You know what I
That's
mean?
my thought. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
See, but it's interesting though because I do think in the movies, Captain America and Iron Man are 100% the duo that makes the team work.
Oh, that's just a fact of life. That's a
Yeah.
fact. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
I think that
Damn.
honestly, I think the best thing the MCU did, especially going into Infinity War and Endgame, was to make Civil War and to really codify that, like, look, this entire thing just revolves around these two guys.
Mhm.
Because a little bit, the two Avengers movies before that, you can argue they suffer from trying to be too even-handed with the amount of like story and gravitas they're giving to all the team members, when really it was Iron Man and Captain America's story all along. Like the
Mhm.
entire, whatever you call it, the Infinity Saga, the entirety of it is really about those two characters. And it's
Mhm.
like it wasn't until Marvel kind of copped to that that everything just really clicked.
Mhm. Oh, also, Survivor, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Oh,
it's still Groot and Rocket to me. I think
yeah.
in the at the end, at the final tribal council, it's Groot, and then Groot's trying to tell everybody why he should win the game. I am Groot. 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 I am Groot.
They're all applauding.
They're
Woo!
like,
Yes.
"Whoa, this fucking guy's great after 39 days on Survivor." We understand. We understand him because we kicked it
Uh-huh.
that long with him. But yeah, I think just Groot and Rocket go together. A raccoon in a tree,
Oh yeah.
you can't beat it. It's
Yeah.
symbiotic slash like they're both autonomous characters, but Groot is sort of a support guy. I Rocket's so great. Goddamn, Rocket and Groot are the people who get out of Guardians of the Galaxy Survivor. Definitely.
Easily. Easily.
Oh, okay. How about this one? How about this
Mhm.
one? Batman Survivor. Batman
Oh,
Universe
Bat
Survivor. The
Family.
Bat Family Survivor. Who gets out?
Interesting.
I have a thought, but I'm really open to input because I think there's so many things to think about. Like Batman is the originator of the shit, but a lot of the people who originated Survivor, some of their techniques are old now, and the young
Yep.
kids have been watching those for years, and they kind of could get around them. There's
Yep.
that angle of it. And also we get down to the people who we're still trying to get down to the people who stir the drink as maybe a capper. Let's think on this. I want to do X-Men real quick because I think X-Men is a big one too,
Yeah.
because you could say it's Scott and Jean. You could say the only people who might not vote each other off is Scott and Jean, but obviously Jean dies. Scott cheats on Jean. There's all these different things that happen to put a fissure in their alliance, their two-person alliance. There's
See,
so many characters.
yeah, I mean, you know who I think. Mm,
See,
well,
it's fucking
yeah, no, that's
hard.
weird. That's weird. Because I was gonna say I would. I don't know why, but it kind of comes. It weirdly comes to me that like Wolverine and Emma Frost would have some sort of devious, like behind the scenes
Oh
alliance going on.
shit.
You know what I mean? But then Wolverine would 100% kick Emma Frost off a cliff if it meant keeping Jean Grey. And like that's
Yes.
the thing that you couldn't. So maybe it would come down to Wolverine and Jean Grey at the end.
Oh man, Wolverine, Jean Grey, and let's say fucking Colossus because they just dragged him along as a goat. That's a
Mm,
player that has no chance of winning the game that you keep bringing along to the end, so you can sit next to them at the final tribal council and be like, "This idiot didn't do anything the whole game, and I was blindsiding fools. I played 5 immunity idols, or all this kind of shit. You could
yeah,
defeat them because your resume is bigger."
yeah.
Colossus would be a goat. They would have voted out Storm in the second round, and I'd have been really mad about that because I would love for part of me thinks it would be. I hate the Wolverine Storm relationship. I really do.
Okay,
I don't think it's real. I think it's this bullshit of like Wolverine gets to kiss everybody and be down with everybody. Like all this
that's true.
hot chick who has fucked the hottest dude in the world in Black Panther, and comes from and has been living in like the future for 10 years, and then she gets out of that relationship and comes back to the X Mansion and lives in the future again. I just I don't see her going for Wolverine. I think and I just don't get it. I don't get it. I think it's dumb. I think it's frankly wish fulfillment on
Mm,
behalf of a lot of shitty writers, honestly, to tell you the truth.
nice.
So I think that sucks. However, if we're talking about the two most capable people on the entire X-Men, when it really comes down to like slicing and dicing, powers, manipulation, this, that, or the other, it might be. Storm and Wolverine or Storm and somebody. Storm didn't get have no powers and just navigated being an X-Men for 10 solid years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she can fight from on the bottom, which is what you have to do in Survivor. You don't have the numbers on you. You have to convince somebody. And her speeches, whether she talks like the X-Men cartoon, you must vote with us. We won't win the game. You know, whether she talks like that or like how she talks in the comic books, where she's just like this goddess who just calmly can lead you and tell you what you need to do and doesn't make it seem like it's not your choice, but it
Mm.
isn't. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like there's something about her calm, super fresh demeanor that I personally think Storm would be one of the last two. I think it might fuck around to be Storm and Emma Frost at the end, as
Yeah.
far as people who can manipulate and are tough as fuck and don't necessarily need their powers, but when their powers come into it, it might be something like that, dude.
Could it in one reality be Storm and Jean Grey? Just because, like, everybody loves Jean Grey almost
Oh yeah,
comically, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
so, like,
Ooh, you know what?
Storm.
That's it. The final four is Storm, Jean Grey, Emma Frost, and Wolverine. And I think they vote. I think they vote
Yeah.
somebody out. I think they get rid of Frost and Wolverine at the
I
last
was
two
just gonna
pick
say, I
basically.
think I think in that final four, Wolverine's the first one getting kicked out,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely,
And
definitely. All
then
girls alliance. They pulled an all girls
there it
alliance.
is. And then everybody knows that Emma Frost is conniving and you can't trust her. So she's
Mm-hmm.
got to go once it's down to
Yep.
the alliance. And so
Yep.
then we've got Storm versus Jean Grey. And it's the
Wow.
wayfish, like, I couldn't do anything wrong, versus the exactly as you just described her, like, I'm running this shit. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. In the end, I think they go, Storm played a better game, Gene. It seemed like you were kind of wishy washy. And I feel like you used your powers to get Scott voted off. You know,
And
it's
that's when she collapsed down with a hand on her forehead. Scott, Scott.
she falls out. That's funny. Okay, so our subconscious has been working on the Batman since we just did a good job on X-Men.
Mm,
Batman Survivor.
okay.
Who are the what's the final four, you think?
I mean, there's no way Nightwing doesn't make it, right?
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know what? I'm going to give a little bit of an undercard advantage to Tim Drake. I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
Tim Drake could play the game
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Tim Drake. You know, part of me goes, my favorite character in the world is Batgirl.
I
I do
know
not think she is conniving, but I do think that she would do good in all the challenges.
for sure.
And then that I think she might be smart enough to make it to the merge. And once you make it to the merge, it's individual immunities. And I think she could win. I think her, Batman, and Damian are winning a lot of independent, or rather, her, Nightwing, and maybe Batman would win individual immunities. I think Damian might be too weak for some of them, like
Yeah.
take lifting a 80-pound bag over, doing all this
I
bullshit.
also think, I mean, Damien's the one that just nobody trusts from the beginning, right? Like,
Yeah, see, I think that's the thing. He's gonna fucking get voted out before the merge because he's like already trying to get Batman voted out. Like the first time his team loses, he's like, we need to get Batman the fuck out of here. It's what I'm saying, guys. And everybody's like, that's a big move, Damien. I don't think we can get enough votes to do that.
yeah,
And
that's
yeah,
100% the thing that happens there. I mean, a part of me wants to say Barbara Gordon, I think, might be the best. Obviously, the non-paralyzed version is going to be the best combination of physical challenges and being able to sort of play the alliance game.
yeah. I mean, I think even if she's bad at the physical challenges in regards to like she's not as fast as Dick, not as strong as Batman, she's not as kung fu as Cassandra. I
Mhm.
think her social game is by far the strongest, even stronger than Dick's. I
Yeah.
think her social game be great because she has dossiers on everybody and she's been studying the game. Like sometimes Survivor will have these people who like they'll go, "Oh, I built a 3D model of this puzzle in my house and I've been working on it for a year. So of course I did it in record times." Jeff Probst. And it's just like, what the fuck kind of geek are you, man? This
Yeah.
almost violates the rules of the shit to be that geeky about it, you know?
Yeah.
But people are, and I think she's that. I think fucking Oracle could win Survivor. Like, hey, I'm useless in the challenges, but I know everything. I
That's
know who's
true.
voting for who. I know who's I because there's some people on Survivor that there's a chick named Sandra. She's won Survivor twice. I've never seen her run more than 1 mile an hour or lift anything that was heavier than a bag of rice. She is the worst physical competitor you've ever seen in your life, and she's just smart. She's like,
Mm.
yeah, well, I'm obviously not no threat, so you can take me to the end. But who else we voting out, Holmes? Hmm. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Then you go to the other alliance. These motherfuckers want to vote on him. I'll tell you what, we need to do this. And then boom, she's got him blindsided. And then the next week she does it to the other group and the other group. Just a genius. I think I hate Barbara Gordon, but I'm
Sure.
acknowledging the skill set.
Sure.
I hate Barbara Gordon. I'm acknowledging the skill set. I think she's in the top four. I think Damien's voted out. I think Dick Grayson is in the top four. I think Batman and Cassandra Cain are in the top four because I think Cassandra Cain they take as like she's too dumb to play the social game,
Hmm.
and I could take her to the end, and people aren't just going to respect the fact that she kicked a basketball off the top of a hoop and did this shit for the physical challenges. They're going to say, what was her social game? Well, she's being dragged along by me, Dick Grayson, or me, Barbara Gordon, or something. I think she could make it. I think Dick Grayson could make it. Batgirl could make it. And I think Batman would make it. And
Yeah.
I think Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson would end up voting out Cassandra first and voting out Batman second, and they would
Yeah.
be the top two at the end.
Let me throw a wrinkle in that. I think Batman might not make it to the top 4 because his one real weakness, if Catwoman is in this competition,
Oh,
she's
yes.
she's stringing him along
Oh,
thinking
my
that he's
God.
gonna on her team, and then she just knifes him in the back sometime before the top 4.
Oh, my God. Oh, dude. Okay. I think the final four. I don't know, man. Does she get voted out shortly after that, or does she form an alliance with the two Batgirls and
See,
be like, "Yo, we
that's
gotta form a Batgirl alliance. Nobody's gonna fucking be able to fuck with us. If they vote me out, they're gonna come for you next." You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So we need to stay together. I think it's three girls and Dick Grayson at the end.
Yeah, man.
Wow,
Yeah.
nice. Wow, that is fucking great. So, okay, who's the winner of Survivor? Who Survivor Cagayan or whatever? Survivor Gotham City.
I mean, I think like a part of me wants to say that it'll come down to Batgirl and Catwoman, Barbara Gordon and Catwoman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think so. I think that I think the girls get rid of Dick, like, and fucking Barbara has to show the girls that she's down, and she has to slice her baby, and she's like, sorry, I got to send you packing. He gets his torch snuffed. He walks lonely down the path, and they all look at his butt and go, mm-mm.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
definitely
what happened.
how it goes down.
Yeah. Okay, so fuck. I think Barbara Gordon might win Survivor. 'Cause I think in the end, she, if there's a three-way tribunal and it's
Yeah.
Catwoman and Barbara Gordon and Batgirl sitting at the final tribal, and they have to articulate what they did throughout the game. Batgirl's like, well, I won a lot and I punched a lot, and I fight. I'm the best. Thank you. And then fucking Catwoman goes, hey man, I lied, cheated, stole, I did this. And Barbara Gordon just gives like, I'm talking about Denzel Washington in Philadelphia
Yes.
type of closing argument, the Atticus Finch type shit, and
Yes.
just destroys the fuck out of them
Yes.
and wins Survivor. Barbara Gordon wins Batman Survivor.
Oh.
Wow.
See, you know what this makes me think is like we need more Barbara Gordon and Catwoman stories, and we
Mm-hmm.
need more what was it, Jean Grey and Storm stories. Like
Yeah.
these feel like duos that could have some mileage, and we don't really see them played as duos in a lot of the books.
Yeah. No, that's fucking great, dude. I mean, oh, and I know we're going to do an addendum to this on our Patreon, patreon.com forward
Ah,
slash the greatest pod. I also did want to read a bit of viewer mail, if you will indulge me.
oh,
Um,
what will I? I will
it
always
is.
indulge that.
It is from a listener named Aaron. And basically, they remark that they are a first time caller, long time listener sort of situation. And it is interesting that we've covered what they talked about, and we covered it right after they sent us this message. It's almost like we're on a level with our fans, dude. We're
Hmm.
we're we're in their brains because or maybe they're in our brains because they're anticipating our every move. All right, and this is
I
an edit
prefer to
point.
think
Just
we're the
keep doing
Randall
this.
Dowling of podcasts. His brain expands. If you're within any near if you're near him at all, you are him.
uh, here we go. This is from Aaron Hardy. Hey guys, love all the stuff you've been doing lately. The way you guys break down most of nerd culture in the most intelligent way without talking down is amazing. I just got done listening to both your greatest weapons and greatest vehicles episodes, and I was wondering why no shout out to any giant mechs. Where does something like Mechagodzilla, the Jaegers from Pacific Rim, or even the Megazord from Power Rangers fit? Love you guys. Keep up the awesome work. So yeah, Aaron H. So there you go. We did talk about the Jaegers in our greatest robots episode, which is interesting. I wrote him back saying, "Oh, we did an episode that tells you what we think about what the Jaegers are. We consider them more robot than vehicle."
That's true. And I will say, I believe we at least mentioned both the Megazord, the Jaegers, and Mechagodzilla in that robots episode.
We did. That's what I'm saying. It's like we're together. It's a telepathic link, baby.
That
Oh,
bond, that unbreakable bond.
Oh, and obviously one duo that we left out is Kit and Michael Knight, but look at our vehicles episode and you will definitely get my treatise on why fucking Kit and Michael Knight are the greatest. However, I cannot count them as a duo because he is a fucking machine. So I just unless you got an organic brain, I can't have you be in my duo episode. I just had to,
Look,
you know,
I'm gonna do two duos that we hadn't mentioned but deserve to be mentioned, even if we're not going to talk about them at all. The first
rock
is
and
going to
roll.
be modern interpretations of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. I would include
Oh.
both the BBC Sherlock and the Robert Downey Jr. Jude Law version of the movies, which are more partners than lead and sidekick.
Mhm.
And then, you know, people have varying opinions. I still think it's one of the most smartly written shows on TV, Rick and Morty.
You know what? We're gonna talk about Rick and Morty real quick because I'm sorry. Fuck a backlash. Also, fuck that guy. I don't care about Justin
Oh,
Roiland.
yeah.
I don't give a fuck about that. That's not what we're talking about. But
No.
I will say, the duo that you mentioned right before that. Well, who are they? Fuck. My brain's
Sherlock
blanking.
Holmes and Watson.
All right, here we go. Okay. But I will say, Sherlock Holmes and Watson, we did talk about Watson on our greatest like sidekicks
Sidekicks.
episode. Yeah, our greatest sidekicks in pop culture episode. Please consult that for our complete treatise on Watson. I think we said some really brilliant things on that. Not the least of which is that he is uh the person who tells the tale and the partner. So
Mm.
he cements the legend of Sherlock Holmes as well as being integral in it. He's like a it's reportage. A lot of the stories are him reporting something that he's witnessed Sherlock do, which is super great. And I love how he gets to get his hands dirty doing a little primitive wushu or something in some of the fights and stuff. I love that stuff. And obviously he procures the cocaine
Well, yeah,
for
you got to
Sherlock.
have a plug. Even Sherlock Holmes got to have his plug.
Sherlock, freaking dude, that's fucked up. Watson's like, "Hey, how'd you get in so close to Sherlock Holmes?" Man, my coke so white it went to Coachella. You know,
Oh shit.
so basically, yeah, Watson's the plug. So greatest pop culture duos: Watson and Tony Montana. Oh shit.
That should
But
be a future episode. I'd read that duo, just things that have nothing to do with each other, but man, I'd read that story.
oh, we should do that on a Patreon. But before we get out of here, Rick and Morty, I gotta say, look, man, I don't understand. And if you quibble with this, send us an email at emailthegreatestpod@gmail.com. That's email EMAIL the greatest pod at gmail.com. That's our email address. And leave us a 5-star review on all of the different pod sources. Please do that. It really helps us move up the charts. And also join our YouTube page. But
Mhm.
Rick and Morty, I gotta say, man, I think they're really emblematic of it's reductive, yes, but there are Jerrys, there are Mortys, there are Summers, there are whatever the fuck the mom's name is. Sorry, love her. She's great. She's one of the
Beth.
stronger characters. Beth. There are Ricks. And there are people, and the beautiful thing is there's so many people who think that they're Ricks. I think Rick shows how hyper competent you'd have to be to get away with Rick's behavior. So how about you in your own life, knowing how fucking incompetent and broke and dumb you are, don't act like Rick.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I did not run out in the streets to try to be Tony Montana. I saw it as a cautionary tale. Maybe some of these fucking assholes who are fucking up the fandom, you know what I'm saying? Why is it that I join all the toxic fandoms besides Star Wars?
You know what?
Why is it that I keep joining all the toxic fandoms? Punisher, Rick and Morty. What the fuck is wrong with me, Bill?
Listen, I will say the Rick and Morty fandom has kind of mellowed out since the whole Szechuan sauce thing. You know,
Mm,
there was a moment there when like the Rick and Morty fans just came on strong as like this is the greatest TV show ever written, and if you don't get it, you're a huge piece of shit and dumb. You're
mhm,
too dumb to get it. Like
right.
those people, I think have I don't want to say they've gone away, but they've become way less everywhere online. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the bottom line is though, the in regards to stories, let's just really quickly, I think Rick and Morty stories are very I don't think of them as nihilistic. I think a lot of them
No.
have heart, and I think a lot of them show like the fact that even somebody like Rick yearns for love and acceptance and thinks he'll never get it. And even when he does get it, it's some kind of Faustian bargain, like when he was fucking that planet that was making all those dupes and shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
Yeah.
I just that I'm affected by that stuff. And it's not trying to be too deep, but I think the plots are written with a level of intelligence that's a little higher than a lot of shows.
Yeah.
And I think and lastly, I think somebody like when the Morty Revolution one, and like, oh, we gotta go to Morty Town, and the Morty who like hated other Mortys and shit, that shit hit me because it's like, God damn, this is like the black cop and boys in the hood. You know what I mean? He's just
Yeah.
he's cruising for your bruising, and he doesn't he doesn't respect you as a person, even though he's exactly what you are. And just there's something palpable about a lot of the metaphors and the messages in Rick and Morty, and they find a way to be very funny. The episodes where they're forgetting those, I'm Mr. Poopy Pants. That shit's great. I love it.
Rick and Morty, I think, is like existentialism without the pretentiousness of existentialism. The whole core idea of existentialism is the encounter with the absurd. Like when you realize that life has no meaning and you can't really explain why we're here, and you may not believe that, but if and when you get to the point where that's what you believe, you realize that all of existence is absurd. And within that, you have to find meaning in things like human connection and love. And
Mhm.
like the show, for whatever faults you might see in it, is one of the best sort of vehicles for that idea that I've ever seen in pop culture. And I love it for that.
Abso-fucking, and that is why Rick and Morty goes on this list, and that is why they're sort of, I guess, some of the headliners of this, along with Survivor, Survivor, Batman Island, Survivor, Pangea, so wherever the fuck they live, Survivor, Survivor Punisher is just a Punisher at the final tribal council by itself with a bunch of dead bodies.
The nozzle of his gun's still smoking. Yeah.
Yep. So thank you for listening to another partnered up, rootin' tootin', back to back shooting episode of
The greatest. You've been pushing too many pencils. Pod.
Yeah, man. Why didn't we talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger and fucking Carl Weathers? They would have made
That's
the last two on Survivor.
I mean, they're definitely the last two on Survivor in that group.